I think the best advice I ever got from a coach was from Andy Haynes. He's the hitting coach for the Pirates now. And he said, it takes a really long time to have a good year, and it also takes a really long time to have a bad year in the major leagues. Like, you can't have a good season in April. You can't have a bad season in April. Even in May or June, you have to play good for a really long time to have a good year. And you have to play bad for a pretty long time to also be locked into a bad year. Mm-hmm. So just play. Like, just go underwater, play, keep grinding, and then we'll look up in September and we'll see what happened throughout the year. But just keep your head down no matter what, and just keep going. And tell it to young guys all the time, because as a young player, when you first come into the big leagues, like, you feel like you need to get off to that good start, or everybody wants that good first week of the season, and you're grinding, and if you struggle out the gate, like, people start to panic, or if you do really well, like, you're kind of riding that high. And once you realize, like, it doesn't mean anything individually and team-wise, like, what April is, like, who cares? Just keep playing, because it doesn't mean a thing until way later in the season.
I saw Tom's Instagram. He had you the other day. You guys were picking out stuff.
Yeah.
He's the man.
Yeah, he's great. He just did his rounds out here.
Yelly and I use the same suit guy.
Oh, is that the one that
Tom
you were?
from Jen's Playbook.
Yeah.
Man, amazing.
He's blown up now, too.
Really?
Yeah, he has. He's big time now.
He's the man, dude.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
He's got a bunch of football guys.
Yeah, I was going to say, I saw a lot of NFL guys.
Oh, Dak Prescott has probably hundreds of suits from him.
Got to, right?
Yeah, 100. And then he does like casual stuff and all that now. So he kills it.
Will you rewear stuff?
Yeah.
I'm not going to name players. Some
Some
people won't, right?
I'm not above that.
Who are the guys in major leagues who like really goes big on fashion, like when, especially on the road?
Stroman's got a lot of fashion going.
You don't, like, when you guys were leaving San Diego, some of those unis that you guys were rocking with.
Yeah, all you Padre guys, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were breaking the internet. I know you saw it.
Manny.
So that was the big thing, was the suits, because we were we had to wear suits. So that was where I met Tom. We got connected. And then the dress code got a lot more casual. Mm-hmm. Then I feel like certain other dudes started taking over that game.
Yeah.
I was the three-piece guy.
You guys aren't suits anymore.
No.
I feel like nobody in baseball.
Nobody really does
the
it
Yankees
anymore,
not?
Used to be like mandatory everywhere.
Yeah.
Suit, dress shoes. You couldn't leave your hotel room without dress shoes. And
That was the Braves way.
Yeah.
Back in the early days, we could not leave the hotel unless we had a button down and slacks.
Yeah.
Like coffee in the lobby, right? Like,
Yeah.
Either way, you got to
dress
have a
shoes
collar.
and slacks and.
See, I'm both on it. Like, I love rolling into a city with suits on. I think it looks so pro, especially if it's like, around dinner time, you're rolling
not
in.
3 in the
Walking
morning.
into the hotel.
Yeah, but if you're going in at 3 a.m. and
There's
you're
a time and place for it.
Yeah, what do we
I
need a
remember
suit
getting
for?
into New York at like 3 a.m. sometimes. You're like, why are we all in suits?
What are we doing? This is pointless.
It's the Bell staff and us. Like, no one's going to see us.
Matching sweats is a thing now.
Yeah, the matching sweats.
For the night trips.
Yep.
You guys are probably chill in Milwaukee, huh?
Yeah, everything's everything's super laid back there.
So Yelly and I in 2017 were on the WBC, the World Baseball Classic, together. So that was the first time me and Yelly hit it off, and I knew about him. I always knew about you because you were in Miami, and when guys play for your hometown team, your cousins or your boys, your buddies, they're all talking about it. But 17, so we're in Fort Myers for a workout, and we're working out at the Twins facility. We were there first couple exhibition games, and then we're going to go down to Miami and play the first round. So we're sitting there, and we get done with BP, and the wind's like howling out. Everyone's just launching or whatnot. So everyone's like, we got an hour before the game, and we all sit down at the table, and I'm sitting there, I was eating, and Yelly comes down with this little plate of chicken, and he's like, I better eat this or I'm going to blow away tonight. Yes.
Back in the day.
Yeah, we hit it off that trip, man. It was me, you, and Stanton.
Yeah.
We would hang out a lot.
Stro a little bit.
Stro would be with us. We had a good celebration when we won.
Yeah.
But that was the year after that you took off.
Yeah, that was my last year in Miami, and I got traded right after that.
How did that feel, first of all? Like, to that whole trade, how all you guys seemed to leave at the same time, just leaving Miami?
I thought I wasn't going to get traded because it was so late. It was like a week before spring, and I remember I kind of wanted to because they were moving everybody, and it was just going to be kind of like a reset there. And like we'd already kind of been through like the struggle, and then we were supposed to try to be good, and like we never really got there to be good. And then once they started resetting it, I was like, well, I don't want to do all that over again in 5 years. Like that doesn't do me good. It doesn't do them good. Like, and I was hoping that they were going to move me, and they're saying no, like the whole off season. So I was like, all right, whatever. I guess I'm going back to spring training. So it was the end of January. I was kind of making like all the spring training plans, like where you're going to live and that whole deal, like to get out to Florida. And then got the call and like, hey, we traded the Brewers. Like, thanks for everything. We'll see you around. Like, wow. Okay.
Like, where's Milwaukee?
Yeah. Well, in Milwaukee, I never really did anything. Like, I would go from like hotel to the stadium back for 3 days and then leave because we weren't in the same division or anything like that. So I never knew anything about really the city. It was one of the few teams in the league where I didn't know anybody at all on the team. Because usually, once you play with guys, like they're kind of scattered throughout the league. So like, I know a few guys, and I knew nobody. So I didn't really know what I was walking into. And then like first couple of days in spring, I was like, all right, this will be pretty cool. Like getting accounts and all the guys on the team, and just what you're walking into. You're like, oh, this is going to be pretty cool for a new start. And it's been a good
Was
run.
that just a comfort thing, immediate comfort that you think made you explode that year, or was it something
I think
that
it was
they
the
did?
lack of comfort, honestly. Like the, kind of once you're someplace for like a while, everybody, you're kind of comfortable. And then when you go somewhere else, it's like almost not that you're not trying to prove yourself every year, but like you've got a bunch of new teammates, you're in a new organization, they just kind of gave up a lot to get you. So you're like, I want to prove that it was worth it. Somebody gave you away, even though you wanted it to happen. You kind of want to prove that, you were a good player and could contribute at a high level. And I didn't think I knew it was going to go how it did, but I think just all those factors kind of together, being in a good environment, and then really it was like the first time being on a team that was competing for something like throughout the year and late into the year. The Marlins, we were always kind of in it, but we weren't at the same time. Like we were in the mix halfway through the year.
You were a tough team, man.
Yeah, we had some talent, and it just like never all came together.
Yeah.
But we had a good offense, and we had some good arms, but we just never had it all come together at the same time. So we were in it some years, like till late summer, but once September kind of rolled around, we were kind of starting to fade a little bit, and this was the first time where I was on a team that was really in it the whole way and playing like a playoff caliber team.
It's a different mindset. It's so true though. When you go to a new team, like you walk in to do your routine in the cage, and you're in there, you're about to take flips, and you're like, damn, there's like 30 guys watching me take flips right now. Like I cannot mess up this swing.
Yeah.
But Milwaukee, a lot of similarities to Tampa, like always feel like they overachieve. Like not a high payroll team. They always have these guys that maybe didn't have success in another organization and find ways to go. So I think there's a lot of similarities in that Tampa culture and the Milwaukee same way.
Yeah, it's really Tampa in particular. I mean, that AL East, obviously, going to the Red Sox and the Yankees and the Blue Jays and the Orioles. But you always see it every year. Everyone, we'll see what Tampa does, but they always find a way to just kind of figure a way to win year after year. And I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Brewers are very similar. Would you agree? Is that team that people underestimate sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, we're never really like star-studded throughout the team, where it's like that can't-miss team of like, oh, if this team's not in October, it's a big problem. But I think we always have a lot of talented players, and they do a good job of getting guys that fulfill certain roles, and they do their job really well. And they don't want them to do anything else than just be what we got you to do here. Like, this is what you do really well. Just do this for us all season, and it's going to be fine.
Seems to be a theme.
Yeah.
That's so true.
A lot of that is the leadership too, man, because, like guys, when they're on that big league team, they look at, one or two players, whether it's a pitcher, whether it's a position player, and, you're a guy that you connect with your teammates real well. You're taking guys to eat all the time. So when they can connect with you off the field as well, I feel like that just kind of boost the morale of the team. I know Brasso was a guy, both you guys were tight.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, he's the man.
He's a gamer. We talked about, dude, I never met Brasso, and opening day when we played you guys in Wrigley, he came to first, and I was like, hey man, I don't know you, but that whole deal with Chapman in 2020, and then you took him deep, I was so fired up to see that. And not that I was a fan of either guy, but the way he handled that whole thing, that was a ballsy deal. That was tight.
He's the best, man. I love that guy. But he's an example of like a guy like the Brewers would love, just somebody that hammers left-handed pitching, and just one of those guys that's not at the forefront of a lot of people or teams' minds, but if you put him in that role and just tell him to be himself and go do his thing, like, can really produce and succeed at a high level. And our roster is filled with those guys of just be yourself, come in. It's not a culture on our team where it's like you have to confine and do this and you have to act this way. And it's like, hey, we got you and we like you to play because of something that you do. So just do that, be yourself, and it leads to a lot of success. Guys are comfortable and come there, have success. Sometimes they move on and get paid. We had Moose for a year of just like, hey, just come and be Moose, man, and put up some great numbers. And then, Yaz was the guy. They've done a really good job developing pitching, and we've got a bunch of good, young, talented players now that are kind of recycling through the team that we had the last 5-6 years of, that core is kind of starting to go separate ways. We still got some guys, but now we've got a bunch of young, exciting talent coming up that reminds me a lot of those guys before they established themselves and became what they became. Right. So it's not really the familiar names and faces on our team that people have kind of associated the Brewers with the last 3-4 years, but those guys could become that if, they reach their potential.
Speaks to what we were kind of talking about a little bit earlier with the change in culture and the change in the way that young guys are treated, especially when they first come to the big leagues. Yeah. I think, were you yelled at? Were you told to get off the couch when you first come to the big leagues? You got that.
That was completely different. The young players basically, they don't really run the team, but they're the majority of I was talking about this with somebody the other day, is like, when you were in Major League camp for the first time as a young guy and you had number 87 or 89, there was probably 10 of you at the most, and the rest are pretty established, older, veteran Major League players. Sure. So your whole goal was to get your work in, keep your head down, and if nobody saw you, great day, and then do it again the next day. Just, put your head down and work. That's so true. And you're trying to stay off the couch. You would mess up one time and you wouldn't do that ever again, because the veteran guys would kind of crush you a little bit. And now there's 3 or 4 veteran guys on the team, and the rest are all guys that are 0 to 3 or a few guys so they're in their last year or two of art. But for the most part, it's a lot of young guys, a lot of rookies, a lot of guys in their first Major League camp. And it's just, the game's changed a lot in that aspect of it's gone so much younger. I can't believe how young our team is this year, and just being in the clubhouse and seeing all the guys that are in their first Major League camp or second Major League camp, it's a lot different. So as a young player, you have more leeway, and honestly, you're probably treated better, which is for the best.
It's for the best. Yeah.
It's definitely for the better. Because if you want guys to perform and succeed, you want them to feel welcome and a part of the team and comfortable. Mm-hmm. I remember sometimes you would be you didn't feel like you were part of the team, but you were always kind of on edge of you don't want to mess up
anything.
And now it's more so if somebody does something, it's you don't crush them or wear them out. You're taking it with, hey man, and if this happened, you got to do this, or you can't do this, or you should be here at a certain time instead of you'd come back and who knows what would have happened to you.
You just paraded in front of everybody, media, it doesn't matter.
But that was just how it was, so you didn't really care about an eye. You're just all right, this is part of being a young player in the major leagues. But just the way the game shifted, that doesn't happen anymore, because if you did that, you'd be the asshole, and nobody would ever listen to you again. So, and probably rightfully so, but so there's just a different way to handle it, and I think it's for the best, but it's kind of crazy how much it's changed.
Yeah. Something that you said is really interesting. So I love that phrase, be yourself. I think it is important. I also heard somebody say that the advice, be yourself, for some people might be the worst advice you can give somebody, because it's great, don't be yourself. But I was just actually funny. I was talking to a guy, different sport, and this topic came up, be yourself. He goes, man, I'm just trying to be myself. But what he realized in the conversation is that he kept talking about, I used to be able to do this. I used to be able to do this. And then he realized, he's man, I'm chasing a ghost. The person who I am is different now. I'm trying to be like I used to be in previous years, but I'm a little bit older. My contract's different. My family situation's different. And I have to kind of reassess on who am I now? Yeah. And so I always think that's really interesting with professional athletes, and how you guys, who you are, being yourself might look different when you're a rookie versus year 2 versus a big contract year. And it's just really interesting. But I think, be yourself is big, but some guys don't know what that looks like.
And you actually told me that one time. So baseball, when in the big leagues, these trends, these guys go off for, a couple of years, whatever it was. So I'm sure in 18 and 19, your big years, you got people calling you, hitting you up on Instagram like, hey bro, mechanically, what are you doing different? Like, what's the change or whatnot? And, Yelly was really in his legs, and I was the same way, really in my legs. So I'm like, Yelly, talk to me about that approach and how you're doing it now. And he's like, look, you can't watch video of yourself from 3-4 years ago because your body's different. You're not that same. You're not moving the same way. You know what I mean? So you got to find ways to kind of simplify off that and go from there. And I always thought that was super smart. But yeah, and like the stuff too with the younger guys, man, the younger guys, what's so different now is a lot of these guys are coming up paid, so, which rightfully so, because a lot of the organizations, these small markets, you got to identify, all right, this guy has superstar potential. We know in 6-7 years, or once he starts making money in arbitration, we're not going to be able to afford this guy. So we got to identify who this superstar is going to be, try and sign him long term, and hope it works out on the back end. So kind of adds another element to that too. But
that's so true.
Yeah, and I got a question as you being that culture guy, because you set the way. Everyone, when they go to Milwaukee, it's Big Woo on the mound and Yelich is out there. That's the team. So from a culture standpoint, and then individually, Stanton, he was a guy that I know you guys were tight. You guys saw each other a lot in the off season. Individually, when you become an MVP in this league, like there's not many people that can relate to what's happening because you have so much that's getting thrown at you on the field, off the field. As soon as you walk out into the clubhouse, to the dugout, and as soon as you step foot on that field, all eyes are on you. So what was, Stanton, I'm sure he had some good advice for you or just kind of helped you on how to handle all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he did. Bronny did a lot too, because he kind of went through that about, 7-8 years prior to me doing it in Milwaukee.
Right. And you guys live close to each other.
Yeah, but I would talk to him a lot throughout that season of just kind of everything that was, because it happened pretty quick for me.
Right.
But honestly, I didn't really feel any different. I kind of just, that stuff would all kind of happen. And then like once you like went on the field, it was kind of just back to, you almost looked forward to that time. Like I always would like look forward to just like, let's just get on the field. Because then you could just do that and you wouldn't have to worry about
media.
Yeah, all the other stuff that came with it, which it's all cool, but sometimes you're like, I just really want to just get back to playing, and you kind of just felt like everything, like your life slowed down a little bit when you could just play.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know how it was going to go, honestly. It was kind of just along for the ride, and just trying to, like you guys said, just be yourself and don't really be anything more or less. Like I didn't think I had to act like that or like change who I was as like a player or person because of it. I was like, oh yeah, it's a cool accolade. It's something that's really special, and like you said, not a lot of people get to experience. It's not something that I ever thought I was going to get to experience. It just worked out that way. But once it happened, it was like, all right, that's cool. Like that happened, but like you're still the same person, and like I just acted almost like it didn't happen. Like you still interact with your teammates the same way, other guys on the field, you're still preparing the same way. So, if anything, it drove you a little bit more to prove that it wasn't like a fluke and you could do it again. And I took a lot of that into the next year of, use it as motivation to prove that now, like I can do this, for a prolonged period of time. It wasn't just a 2-month heater that we went on, and if it was, it would have been sweet. It was a hell of a heater.
This is why we need guys like Yelich winning the MVP in the league, because if I won the MVP, I would be a different person. I would be a little bit different, okay? I'm telling you that right now. Funny, or not funny, awesome Stanton story. So WBC in 17, our second round was in San Diego, and we won to advance to LA. So the next day, the team was flying out at some point in time, and Stanton got a plane, and me, him, and Yelly went to LA the night before. And man, we got to go get some dinner, hang out, and just to see how, like, Los Angeles, a huge city, full of celebrities or whatnot. I mean, they treated Stanton like gold out there, man. And that was cool to see. That was an experience for me, for sure.
Yeah, well, he was there a lot. He was there a lot in the off season, knew a lot of people. And I think that season, well, he hadn't won the MVP yet, but that season is when he did win the MVP and just went off and was pretty fun to watch.
He was a menace.
He was pretty fun to watch.
He was a menace. He was so frightening in the box. Like, there's been a couple of guys where you look at them and you're like, I don't really want to face this guy right now. He was one of them.
Yeah.
Pujols is probably another one. Ryan Zimmerman for me, obviously.
Yeah. So, you gave up the first home in the stadium. And the thing too about Stanton was like, you probably knew about him because of California and all that, but like he never did the national like showcase circuit or the national like tournaments that every guy in the baseball community did. I know he played football. I don't know if that blocked it, but he gets called up with the Marlins at like 20, starts hitting all these homers. I mean, fast forward to now, what does he have, like 400 something career homers?
Yeah, he's probably gonna get to 500. He's got a ways to go still, like years wise to play. So I think he's in the low fours right now. So I would imagine that he's gonna get to
he's in good
500
shape.
homers, which
that's impressive.
You know, watching him play, you kind of always thought there was a pretty good chance because he got there so young, and it was just special when he'd barrel a ball, and it's different than when most guys do it. You know, maybe there's one or two guys that could maybe relate in the whole game to, his kind of pop. But man, he had some pretty special years in Miami, especially that one when he, about hit 60 homers and he won the MVP and did that whole deal. And I honestly think he's going to get there. And he's quiet, reserved guy. You've been around him. He kind of just does his thing and, hits homers.
That's cool. I was telling him, I was going to ask you. So I was with the Cleveland Browns from 16 to 19. Okay. And I first heard a lot about you from a player on the Browns who you probably know what I'm talking about. So Baker Mayfield, bro. So I was with the Red Sox also at the time, and we'd come back and Baker would ask, and he would just say, hey, do you know Christian Yelich? I was like, I don't know him personally. And he would just talk about how amazing you were. And just players, when we're eating or whatever, he'd just talk about how awesome you are. And how did you, and I never asked him, but how did you two cross paths?
So I was training at this facility in LA, usually most of the off seasons out there earlier in my career. And they did a lot of like combine training guys. Like they train a lot of guys for the NFL combine, and a lot of the NFL guys would go in there in the off season. And I think Oklahoma played in the Rose Bowl that year against Georgia or something. And I think they ended up losing, but Bake ended up staying out there, and he ended up going to this facility to train and get ready for the combine and all the stuff that you got to do as a, guy that's hoping to get drafted in the NFL. And we were in there at similar times and just kind of hit it off, got to talking, and those guys are kind of just living out there for a few months in training, and I had a month or two left of the off season, and we kind of just got to know each other there at the gym, and then started like hanging out and doing stuff once we got out of there, and became buddies. He came out here for spring training one time, and awesome. He's a great guy, man. I feel like he's one of those guys that early in his career, he was so like misrepresented by like the media and like everything else, because he's a great dude and like great teammate, and like anybody that's ever been around him is like they love him. He's a great guy. He's a gamer. Like I've never played with him in football, obviously, but you've been in locker rooms and been around teammates where you're like, I'll play with that guy any day of the week, and a gamer. And I feel like you've started to see it now more of like, how good of a teammate is and everything they did with the Bucks this year and that whole deal. So I'm happy for him to see him have success there, and
that's so cool.
Kind of have people get to know who he really is.
Yeah, I agree. One of my favorite Baker Mayfield stories. So I forgot what week it was. I know it was in December. I forgot who we were playing, but I was in the building late at night. So my office was downstairs. So I go downstairs and thinking it's completely empty. No one's in the building. It's late at night. And I go downstairs and you hear some activity going on in the hallway. I see this huge inflatable snowman, and you just hear just like this tinkering, and somebody is hard at work. And I walk down, I'm like, what is going on? I look down, and it's Baker. And he's by himself, and he's decorating. He's decorating with Christmas decorations. Blew up this entire. So he's decorating. He's on a knee, and he's like, hey, what up, Sue? And he's just kind of going after it. And I'm like, what are you doing? And I'm looking at my watch. It's so late. He goes, oh, so he was a rookie. So he goes, the rookies, we're having a competition to see who has the best decorated room. So in the NFL, quarterbacks have their room, linebackers have their room, defensive linemen, everyone has their rooms, and it's a competition. And Baker is going all out, and he goes, and he tells me, he says, Sua, he goes, I hate to lose. And so he's in here, he's just decorating, and obviously they win, they dominate, and that's his personality. He on the field, off the field, the man wants to win, even staying late at night to decorate the quarterback's room. It's hilarious.
He came out to camp with us for a few days. Like he spent a few days, like we gave him a uni and everything. He coached first base during the spring training game for us.
I remember him and Moose were like playing catch.
We had like a strength intern one spring training. We put a Browns helmet on him and walked him out like 10 yards and just had Baker pepper footballs at him. He was trying to catch him like at the combine, and it was a good thing he had the helmet on because they were hitting him square in the just square off the face mask. But he came out and hung out with the guys, and it was a great time. I think that was 2019 maybe. Yeah, and all that. Yeah,
that's cool.
Dude, he's lights out in those commercials too.
That's what I was just gonna say. He's brilliant in those commercials.
Yeah,
the way that you'd think he's an actor, he's had some sort of training. The way he's able to pull those things off. But
yeah, I remember I ran into him at the charity softball game.
Yeah, the California Strong thing. Back. Yeah.
So dude, it was crazy. I don't even know what year it was, but we were in Texas and we went back to the team hotel one night, and I don't know if it was his mom, his aunt, whoever it was, but some lady comes up and she's like, hey, Eric, my son Baker, he's a football player. He's like best in the state, really good, going to college, all this type of stuff. So we ended up taking a picture. It was me, him, and Chesler Cuthbert, one of the young guys with Kansas City. So fast forward to your guys' softball game, Baker comes up to me, and I'm thinking he has no idea who I am because obviously, the world knows who he is. And he showed me the picture, and I was like, oh, damn, dude, this is wild. But he came out to a game in San Diego, and then his brother was getting married out there, came to a game, hung out. Then like a week later, we get like this big gift basket, and it was from Legends, the clothing company, a bunch of sweaters, shirts, and Baker wrote, thanks for having me out, boys, and sent a bunch of merchandise and a bunch of stuff like that.
Just a good dude, man. Really, really good dude. And, good friend, and glad he's crushing it down in Tampa.
I like those cross-sport collaborations, like baseball players connecting with football players or golfers. Are there any athletes or who have friends from either other sports, and not just like buddies, but even who you like to learn from or like pick their brain? It might be a completely different sport, but you just like to either, whether you know them or not, you just like to learn about their mindset or their approach or just how they do what they do. Do you guys have any connections or to other sports or sports that you like to study?
I'm a big fan in like when the cities kind of unite. So like when I was in Kansas City, Dice and I were pretty much the only like young guys on the team, single at the time. We were going out and having fun and all that. And Travis Kelce would always come along. So we ended up becoming tight with him. It was Travis and a running back named Charkandrick Ward, number 35. So we would always kind of link up. We would hang out. And to see that whole thing spiral out, I mean, he is A-list of A-list celebrity right now. You know what I mean? But just to know who he was before, and he hasn't changed, kind of like Yelich says with the MVP stuff. He's the same guy. Obviously, there's a lot more attention that comes along with it. But the respect factor for me is off the charts because, like I said, if I'm out there winning MVPs, I'm not answering any of your guys' phone calls.
Appreciate that. No, I appreciate that. At least you let us know. Let us know early on. I wish I paid more attention. I wish I paid more attention while I was playing during my career, as to ask more questions. Early on, I was so timid and I threw from down here, so there wasn't many guys that could talk about mechanics or something like that. But with some of the guys that I got to play with, I wish I was able to dive into their heads. And I now study the game more since I've stopped playing than what I did when I did play. And I think that was one fault that I look back on, and I wish I had done that a little bit differently.
What do you got on? So like for me, the biggest thing I realized last year with Chicago, loved all the guys, great dudes, but the young guys are into different stuff. You know what I mean? So like we've always talked about having to adapt in the game and like to connect with some of the younger guys now. What do you think some of those, I know a lot of guys, especially in COVID, a lot of guys were on the games and the PlayStation, all that type of stuff. But what's some of the stuff now you feel like with the younger guys is a good way to connect with them, or even just to, get them on board as quick as possible?
I think, for me, it's like just take these guys to dinners, when a lot of the times the cities are all new to these guys. So if there's like a cool restaurant or some spot that you've kind of been throughout your time in the league, and it's like, hey, like somebody took you there, at some point, some veteran players took you there, or you found it somehow. So take those guys to dinner, kind of let them experience the big leagues a little bit, because I'm sure all of us, like that's some of our favorite times, was not playing really. Like playing's great, but it's just like hanging out with your teammates, going to dinner, just hanging out. And so that's kind of a way, like I'm not a big video game guy, but like you said, video games, all that stuff's pretty prevalent now in baseball. And so just take them to dinner, talk at the field, like get to know these guys. And, you know, a lot of the time, like the struggle of the young player is still the same as when we all tried to break into the league. You know, you're trying to navigate your way through Major League Baseball, your first full season, second season, the ups and the downs. And, you know, it's so challenging. You know, you always have to kind of adapt and reinvent yourself and find ways to kind of like tweak and survive and continue to get better, you know, and that's the way that you last a long time in the league, is like you have to always kind of get better or take what you learned and, you know, what you did well, what you struggled on, and kind of reapply that to the next year to keep going and surviving. And if you know, when you can't do that, that's kind of when guys are weeded out. So
what's been your biggest takeaway? You were here pre-analytics-ish. Now you get so much information, it's almost at fault. What's the biggest thing you take from analytics and you use on a daily basis as a hitter? Because I know pitching-wise, there's so many numbers I can go to find out how I'm doing. I don't know how you guys as hitters use it.
You can kind of, if you've never like faced a guy, you can kind of look at the stuff and the numbers and know like what it might look like in the box, like based on what the numbers are saying, like how like the fastball plays or certain things like that. Like before you would, you know, whatever it was 10 years ago, like this guy has a video. Video, but you'd be like, this guy has a good fastball, but like nobody knew why. Right. It was just like, oh yeah.
Like, go on a ride.
Or like you would see guys throw fastballs and guys just like wouldn't hit them, and they throw them middle, and just guys would miss them, and everybody's like, I don't understand, like how come this guy's fastball nobody hits it? But like now you can obviously tell that. And I think all that stuff's definitely helped pitching a lot more than hitting. Sure. You know, I think pitchers and the technology and pitching and how you can apply it so far ahead of hitting, because no matter what, hitting's always going to be reactionary. So like we're always going to have to react to something that the pitcher does no matter what. And with pitching, like guys used to have bad pitches and didn't know they were bad, so they just throw them all the time. It'd get whacked and be like, well, you know, I hung my slider. But now you can throw the pitch, they look at it like, that pitch sucks, you're never throwing it again. Exactly. Or take your fingers, move them over here, you're going to get this much more spin on it, the ball's going to move this much more. This fastball that you throw, no good, never again. Now you're going to throw four seamers. And so like pitchers know like what pitches are good, what pitches are bad, how their stuff plays, how to tunnel it.
And how to recover if you're having a bad couple of outings. They can go straight to the numbers.
Right.
Whereas we were just left out there in the middle of the ocean trying to figure out from watching two videos alongside of each other what you're doing differently. Yeah,
there's nothing in hitting like that. You can't just go in hitting and be like, well, just like move your hands down a little bit and now you're going to hit homers. You know, it's like you still have to react to all that stuff. And it's made hitting and everything so much more challenging than it was even 5-6 years ago.
I bet.
No doubt. For me, like as a hitter, the pitching, like you said, the information for pitching is always going to be, I think, ahead of hitting. But like Yelic's saying, like it can save you that first at bat where, you know, back in our younger days, I'm not gonna say back in the day, but like it would take an at bat or two to see what the guy's ball is doing, if it's got a little cut to it or whatnot. Now you can identify it by these numbers that they have and, you know, the horizontal break and all that type of stuff. And then like I felt later on in my career where it helped out was when there was guys I faced in the past where like I didn't have much success off of them. So it's like, all right, you know, the whole C-ball, hit ball, this guy it's not working out for me good. Now, can I eliminate a pitch? Can I look in a certain zone? Like, I felt like once I gave you that C-ball, hit ball battle and I wasn't having much success, then I would kind of dive into it a little more and see if I can simplify anything, if I can, you know, just find any little edge I can have on this guy without, you know, what I haven't had before. So,
are you doing that in the middle of an at-bat? Or is that from in the middle, like from pitch to pitch, or is that from at bat to at bat? Like, for example, what you were just describing, that process you just said, is that happening in real time in the middle of an at bat?
I like the game. I like to just free it up. I think before the game, you're kind of like, you're focused on the starter. And if it's a guy you see well, you're like, all right, I don't want to dive too much into these numbers. I don't want to overcomplicate things. I want to get in there and see it, boom, and that. If there's a starter or a lefty that comes in and, you know, it's been 2-3 at bats and you really haven't made any good adjustments on them, then it's like, all right, let's dig a little deeper into this and let's see like what can we break down? What can we eliminate? How can we, try and get a small win off a guy, and then eventually, hopefully, we have some success off the dude.
Yeah, it's interesting because just talking to a lot of different guys over the course of the years, whether it be a quarterback or a baseball player or a tennis player, we always talk about relevant cues and irrelevant cues, things that matter and things that don't matter. And when you're hitting in particular, obviously I've never been a major league hitter, but when I hear players describe what it's like in the box, sometimes they'll say, I'm focused on things that literally do not matter. And it just starts to cloud the mind. But then they say, sometimes you can be so locked in on something that all of a sudden you're locked in on, whether it be mechanics or see the ball up, that you completely miss the pitch. And so I'm curious, in your guys' experience, and even as a pitcher, do you guys?
8 at bats.
Yeah, yeah, 8 at bats. Okay, so when you're 8 at bats, did you guys have certain cues or certain things to simplify an at bat? Because obviously hitting, one of the hardest things, if not the hardest thing to do in sports. So what do you do to mentally simplify? Or what did you guys do in your career?
I mean, I always think like once you're in the box, like simpler is better. Like the less you can have going on in your head, the better it is. You should have, like, for me, a couple cues of like what you're trying to accomplish. One of them should always be, for me, timing. Like, I think it's timing. Like, okay, like when do I need to like get going? And like you kind of work on that in the on deck circle, and then so in the box, like you're thinking timing cue, and then maybe like depending on really like what the situation is that's going on up there. Is where are base runners? How many outs are there? What's this guy trying to do to me on, like, what is going to happen?
Trying to make me pull, or
right.
Whatever.
They're trying to get, it's depending on, infield in, back, guy on third, second, kind of just what's going on. So you're thinking along with that, kind of giving yourself maybe an idea of like what to expect, or if you've faced the guy before in certain situations, like what happened prior. Like that's all kind of going in there. And then it's like, all right, now I just need to be on time and just try and execute and get something. I don't ever like thinking about anything else besides that in the box.
No, and that's what's complicated about hitting is like when you're younger and you're in high school and you're coming up, it's like, how hard does this guy throw? And then what's his secondary pitch? And that's basically all you need to work or worry about. And as your mechanics are your mechanics. You can make small tweaks here and there, but as you're kind of moving up and going to the next level, college, minor leagues, all that, it becomes so much more of an approach game. How am I going to handle this at bat? Each at bat's different. I feel like in the big leagues, you try and limit the at bats you feel like you waste. If you go up there and you swung at 3 sliders in the dirt, it was like, all right, I was looking for a fastball. I shouldn't have been looking for a fastball. Like that is wasting an at bat going against my approach or just not having an approach. So it's fascinating because as a young hitter in high school, your thought process is so simple, and as you move up and have more information, it can complicate things a lot. But at the end of the day, it's refreshing to hear a guy like Yelich just say, like, it's timing. Like nothing happens without timing. Like, yeah, there's mechanical stuff you want to look at and tweak over the offseason, but at the end of the day, if you're not focused on that simple stuff and on time, it's a breakdown. None of it's going to work.
Yeah, I mean, there's different cues for everybody, but that's kind of just mine. I think we've probably all fallen into the trap, like hitting and pitching, of like thinking about mechanics that day. Like I kind of feel like when the game starts, like whatever your mechanics are, they are for that day. Like
arm angles too.
Right. There's no real, like, once the game starts, there's no real fixing it then. Like the time for fixing it's passed, and then it's coming after the game. The next day you can kind of give it another crack early, but when the game's there, it's just about kind of competing and figuring out how to like work with what you have. And it's that trap that I feel like you have to fall into it to realize it doesn't work. Because we're all trying to fix it or thinking about mechanics in the box or on the mound, and then it just goes sideways on you so quick, and like, I probably shouldn't do that again. But you have to fail and do that to realize like, this isn't how you should go about it.
So speaking of that failure, you talk about the banger years in a row, 2 years in a row, then you have a couple of down years, nice bounce back year last year. What were those down years like, especially after how high those years before were?
Yeah, just trying to find it. Baseball's so hard, and you're just trying to find something. We had COVID in 2020, and that year sucked. Like playing during that was
miserable.
Yeah, terrible.
I was watching from home, and I'm honestly thinking, because I'm the guy that I can't generate my own adrenaline. Like if I'm throwing a side session, I'm at 80 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Like, and the guys are in there now pumping 95, 100 miles an hour with no one around. But I couldn't understand how you guys were able to just get up for those games.
Yeah, I mean, you just went and played them. That's all you're there to do.
Different.
It's just
it was certainly different
to play, do that whole deal. But so that there was that, and then some injuries and stuff like that, and just I couldn't get like my body to move the same. Like it was just I was struggling to do things that I had done in the past, and it was just kind of finding tweaks and adjustments of like, okay, I can still do this. I just might have to go about it a different way. And I started doing that last year and really liked how it was going, kind of built on it a little bit and learned it on the fly throughout the season and just took that into this off season. Now still doing it, but I was like, I feel like I can still play at a really high level. Like my body feels good, healthy. And you know what you're trying to accomplish, and so it's like, why not? You don't have to do it the same way every time. Like there's a lot of ways to hit and be successful in that whole deal. So kind of just making little tinkers and adjustments and finding ways to survive.
Yeah, and what I love about that too is like, we talked about you leading in Milwaukee and being the guy. So that message is so strong because, you could have easily been on the IL, sat out a couple weeks and made sure everything's good with you individually and you're 100% ready to play and go out there and play. But when other guys see you play banged up, and I feel like other guys around the league even know, like, all right, this guy's playing through something right now, like that gains a whole nother level of respect because, I'm not, the guys that post, the guys that play through things, that's a whole different level of respect. When you're there for your team, you're available. So that had to have been like, in my eyes, like that was probably tough times for you. You want to have success individually, but at the same time, it's almost like as a teammate, I bet the team, like your teammates were admiring you. Like I'm sure you're getting in there every day, grinding in the training table right next to Locaine.
Yeah.
But to them, for them to see you grinding and going through that, like to me, that's like, there's so many easy ways you could have gotten out of that, but you posted and you tried to play through it. And that's where like these teams, these organizations, when they have their guys, that's the stuff that like lead by example or other guys watch. To me, you can't put a price tag on that.
Can't measure it either.
Yeah, you can't. That's strong.
I think guys just take pride in like certain guys take pride in just going out there every day, like good or bad. Like if you can be out there, regardless of like how you do individually, like if you can go out there all the time, because anybody that's played major league season realizes how hard it is to like physically post and mentally post all season.
Yeah.
And so the guys that do that, they're respected just because people know like inside the game, like how hard it is to go out there year after year after year and day after day to do that stuff. And, players take pride in it. I always take pride in trying to go out there every day. Like I want to be available for all the games, whether they play you or not, who knows, but just to be available for the full season. It's something that I've always taken pride in and kind of found that if you're just healthy all year, like if you're just out there and you can play the full season, like you're going to probably have a good year. Mm-hmm. It's when it's like the start stops, you've got to go on the IL, go to the rehab assignment and then jump back into the major league season. It's so hard to just jump back into the major league season because it's like getting out on a freeway. That the game's so different. You can't replicate it anywhere. You have to be in that flow of the day to day and kind of just play. Because I don't know about you guys, but anytime that I would not like be hurt or like you have the day off or something, you're just like watching the game. It looks impossible sometimes.
When I'm in the dugout,
you sit there from the you sit in the dugout and you're like, how does anybody do this? Yeah. And you do it all the time. You're on the team, so like obviously you can do it, but you sit out there and you look at the game, you're like, I don't know how anybody does this. Like the game looks so fast, like from the side, like how hard guys throw, like guys hitting. Like I would always remember like going out, like we'd win the game and like you go out in the handshake line. You like turn around, like you look around, like I don't know how those guys, how did we win? Like that looks so hard. Like the game looks so hard, and you can't replicate that anywhere. And no matter how much you take like reps in the cage trying to get ready or play rehab games, stuff like that, like there's nothing that can simulate a major league game.
No, and that's what's the hardest part about hitting. How do you practice a major league at bat? They have these pitch simulators, they have all that, but there's really nothing you can do until you step in that box in a game and it's go time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Someone asked me once, an athlete, he was a basketball player, and we were talking about leadership. And he says, in his opinion, he goes, it's easier to be a leader in an NBA because he's like, I can just go out and dominate a game. if I'm struggling, I'm in a little slump, okay, I'm just gonna go throw it 40. I'm gonna decide it, and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do it. Football, middle linebacker, if you're a leader, I'm just gonna get more tackles. And he asked a question I didn't know how to answer because I just said I didn't know. He said, how do you continue to be a vocal leader for your team if you are a vocal leader? If you consider yourself a leader of the clubhouse, how can you be a leader when you're going through an 0 for 20 slump, when you're struggling? Because the natural person is going to tend to kind of go in, how can I lead when I'm sucking right now? And I've always wondered that. How in baseball, if you're a leader of the clubhouse, how do you still lead the clubhouse when you might be scuffling?
To me, it's like consistency. Like if you're 0 for your last 20, but I see you sticking to your routine every day, you're getting your work in, you're going in the cage, you don't break that. That is where it's like, all right, he's going to break out of this. You know what I mean? Because he's consistent with his routine and all that. And it's such a mental game as well. Like the best guys I've been around are the guys that convince themselves, like they literally tell themselves, oh, like if he throws me that heater today, I'm going deep. Like I know this. And they just play it up in their mindset to where it's almost like they envision it happening before it does. And those times are dangerous because when you're going through those, if you start to overthink, I mean, that hole, it can dig deeper, you know what I mean? And that's extremely dangerous. I was listening to Matt Olson the other day. He was saying, the top hitters in the game, everyone's going to scuffle. Everyone's going to go through that. But the top hitters, it's like 2-3 days, to where other hitters, it's like, 2-3 weeks. So mentally, you have to just stay so strong and understand it's going to change. And like we talk about all the time, when you're coming into a clubhouse, going into a batting cage full of 10 other guys with that same belief, and we have the ability to joke about me swinging at a slider looking terrible or doing that, it makes that battle, like you take that on with these guys, it's so much easier and it frees you up. That's for me, the most success I've had individually was when the teams had success, because it was like we're all rolling, we're all doing our thing, and it's just like a combined effort.
Yeah, I think when you're struggling, it's really just about how you conduct yourself. Like you're putting the work in. There's a certain standard that the team has set or you've set. As long as you're still posting every day, working, conducting yourself, like people are going to respect that. Baseball's not a sport where you can just decide to play good. It just doesn't work that way. You can't just, and even the best guys in the world, like you can't just take over a game. You're going to struggle all the time too. So it's unique in that sense of baseball is truly a team game, and there's going to be struggles, there's going to be good times, but the way you conduct yourself on the day-to-day, being available, like, some guys will struggle and it's like right to the IL, like, oh, I'm hurt, I just need a break. I need a break for a week. Yeah. If you don't do that and you're a guy that always just keeps grinding and keeps going out there and keeps trying to produce and help your team win in whatever way that may be, that guys will respect that in the clubhouse, and you'll be fine as a team. Just
be the same person.
Yeah.
I was a kind of a veteran guy with the Braves early on, but then my career's kind of been a 3-part series. But the Braves part, where I was fairly decent and we had a really good bullpen and a good team, and we had some really good teams. You just show up with the same person every single day. You show the young guys how to do it. But that was in an era where it was still that kind of make guys uncomfortable to get them comfortable type thing. So I was transitioning at that point. But then when I came to Kansas City, I saw the chemistry you guys had, and I saw that everybody was on the same page. Everybody was moving together. You just had back-to-back years that were insane. And that's where I really learned, again, that it's about nurturing, and it's about, making sure everybody's comfortable and making sure everyone's having a good time, because it's a tough pressure. It's pressure. Guys like these, all eyes are on them. I'm sitting in the bullpen just hanging out waiting for that one inning of fame. If I don't get my job done, someone's coming behind me to do it. The pressure is on these guys day in, day out. The physicality of playing 162 in 180 days and having to deal with all the other stuff as well. It's insane what these athletes are able to do.
And it takes everybody in the building too, like if you walk in the cage day 3 of this struggle and the hitting coach tries to throw something completely different at you, it's like, whoa, like why? You know what I mean? So it really does take everybody on the team in that building to just be as consistent as possible. I think the level in the big leagues where we're at, the mental side of it to me is more than half the battle. I think that is a good chunk of the battles that players are going through each and every day. And what's so cool about the Tampas, the Milwaukees, these teams is, to me, it's like those coaches, everybody on that staff, the consistency is there. Like, they get it. They get how hard the game is. They get that when we leave spring training, 162 games, there's going to be about a third of the season where we don't know what the hell's going on. You know, we don't know we feel like we're standing on our head in the box. But if you just walk in there and they're giving you that impression of like, no, nothing's changed, dude. Just another day. We're going to get through this. I feel like that gives you a little bit of a confidence boost too.
I mean, that's why, Counts was so good for us in Milwaukee for that, for that reason. It was like, he played for a long time, so he understands like what's in front of you. Mm-hmm. He would never panic, man. We'd lose 5-6 in a row, and like, it'd be like, whatever, you know, like, I don't care. I can count on one hand in 6 years playing for him of how many times like he aired us out, like truly. I think it might've been like twice,
right?
Of like really like got into us. And it was always effort based. It was never results based of like, that was a terrible effort. Like after a few days of playing bad or like, that can't happen. And I remember it was last year, we lost 3 games. We got swept by the Dodgers in LA, like in August.
Easy to do.
Yeah, it'll happen. It can happen quick. And so we got swept there. We were kind of scuffling towards the end, and it's like we had like a quick team meeting after that of like, it's supposed to be hard. Like if you want to go to the playoffs and you want to, you have aspirations for bigger things, which is the postseason championship. It's supposed to be hard. Mm-hmm. Like this is supposed to be a grind. It's going to be messy. So like we shouldn't be panicking. Like this is what we wanted, is what you expected. Like it's supposed to be a grind. And I think it was such a good message for us at the time of like, okay, well, he's not panicking, and he would do little things like that throughout the seasons, really the last 5-6 years of like giving you good perspective and just like being the same person every day. Cause I feel like a lot of places you can go up, down. Like if you win 5 in a row, we're winning the World Series. You lose 5 in a row, worst team ever. It's over. Yeah. But he was always kind of just like that. And you kind of see young players look at that, and it relaxes them, and it relaxes everybody really on the team. Like, all right, now we just think about the next series, like forget about what just happened here and keep going. And we went on a roll. I think we won like 10 in a row after that, and kind of locked up the division in that little stretch. Of just kind of ran out to a lead and did that whole deal. And kind of back to touching on young players is like, when you're struggling too, is like if you take the attention off of yourself, like if you take the focus off of you and you kind of want to help everybody else and help your teammates, it helps you get through those stretches of like, I'll be fine, but I'm just going to be a good teammate and help these guys. And I think the best advice I ever got from a coach was from Andy Haynes. He's the hitting coach for the Pirates now. And he said, it takes a really long time to have a good year, and it also takes a really long time to have a bad year in the major leagues. Like you can't have a good season in April. You can't have a bad season in April. Even in May or June, you have to play good for a really long time to have a good year, and you have to play bad for a pretty long time to also be locked into a bad year. Mm-hmm. So just play. Like just go underwater, play, keep grinding, and then we'll look up in September and we'll see what happened throughout the year. But just keep your head down no matter what, and just keep going. And tell it to young guys all the time, because as a young player, when you first come into the big leagues, like you feel like you need to get off to that good starter. Everybody wants that good first week of the season, and you're grinding. And if you struggle out the gate, like people start to panic, or if you do really well, like you're kind of riding that high. And once you realize like it doesn't mean anything individually and team wise, like what April is, like who cares? Just keep playing, because it doesn't mean a thing until way later in the season.
It's funny you say that. I used to have a conversation with someone about you, and it didn't matter what your numbers were in April or May. You could be hitting 230, 240 in May or whatever. It's like you'd look up in September and you'd be hitting 300 every single year. It was insane to watch you do what you did for a while there in Miami. It was fun, man. It was really fun. And then obviously Milwaukee too.
Yeah, I think in 2015, I was hitting like 220 in June, 230 in June with like...
That was my year in the Braves as well.
With like 4 homers. So I was like, I'm about to get sent out of here. Like I'm about to get sent down. Like I've kind of felt it too. I was like, and I would love to ask probably one of the coaches back then, like, how close was I to get an option? I signed one of those early deals right after 2014. And honestly, that's probably what might have saved me from getting an option. But I think I was still close to like, hey man, like go figure it out and then come back. But Yeah, it was like 220, 230 in June with like 4 homers and 3 homers. And like, that's not good if you're playing every day.
Dude, you're so right though. But so Stu, from a mental side or a process side, to have that thought as a young Yelly, like, all right, I'm not putting up numbers right now. Like, I'm probably day to day right now. And like, as a player, you go in there and you're so focused on today being the day to turn everything around. You have, your cage session, your BP session, everything feels good. And then, something happens at first at bat, you're 0 for 1, or you line out, whatever. It's like, here we go again. Like, how do you stay away from those thoughts mentally? Because they're realistic thoughts,
I love what you were saying earlier. I think it all comes down to expectations. I'm listening to your conversation and everything that you're saying. I think a lot of times people will always ask, hey, and we've talked about this, what do you tell Major League Baseball players? And I've said it before, I don't tell players anything. They're going through it. But what we have not been talking about is breathing or journaling or visualization. A lot of times a player doesn't need a prescription. What they need is a perspective. And you don't know where that perspective is going to come from. Sometimes it comes from a teammate. Sometimes it comes from a coach. And sometimes what you were just describing, hey, it takes a long time to have a good season. It takes a long time to have a bad season. Just that in and of itself, to step back and say, oh, wow, that's right. And so I think, just to answer your question, it's being able to help a player or a person realize the expectations. You can't underestimate 2 things: how hard it's going to be and how long it's going to take. And so one of the things we always talk about is Mike Tyson's quote: everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And so whenever a player says, I want to have this goal or do this, the next question I have is, what are you going to do when you go out and punch out the first 2 times in today's game? What are you going to do when, okay, you're excited now, when you go 0 for 5 in this, or 0 for the series? To pause them, to have them say, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Okay, great. You identify the worst case scenario. You identify you're not going to quit and give up, but all right, you know how you're going to respond when adversity strikes, not if it strikes, so that you can bounce back faster. And so that's some of the things that I've seen.
So you're equipped for it. I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have that perspective when I was grinding in 20. You're full panic at that point. You've got a year in the league, and that you're full panic of like, I'm about to get sent out of here, which is like every young player's worst fear is getting sent out. You're trying to survive, but
they're going to send me to New Orleans. I don't even live there.
But going through those struggles, and then you like come out the other side and realize like, okay, it was fine. Like looking back on that season of like how, like in the totality of it, instead of like that little snapshot of like, oh, okay, like just because it's this right now in the middle, that doesn't mean that's what it's going to be at the end. And so I think for the rest of your career, you kind of draw back on those experiences and you have perspective, and throughout your, and the deeper you get in your career, and that's where you can really help young players. And that's where veteran guys come in on teams and help these players of like, because you've gone through those battles and like those ups and downs, those struggles, and like you realize you have good perspective on it, and you can help them like, hey, like this is what's going to happen, and it's going to be okay for these reasons. And you can't quantify that though, so you can't quantify like how important like having veteran guys on the team are that have gone through that stuff, that can help these young stars and these young prospects, guys that helped me throughout when I was younger. And that's why having those guys around teams and having a good mix is so important. But you can't analytically quantify that. Like you can't show how much value that provides, but it does, and you know it does because you've been on teams. But
especially early on, because you're so naive as to what it. Sure, you played in AAA, but you get to the big leagues and it's a whole different ballgame. Especially back in the day, it was not to say that, I hate saying that. Especially back in the olden days, when you just show up at a hotel, you got to tip the guy. You don't touch your bags. It's like when and where everything, especially me, everything was so fresh. I'm a 27-year-old rookie out of the WBC. And I walk into a clubhouse with Andrew Jones, John Smoltz, Tom Glavine, Chipper Jones, and I'm just like, holy shit. And I literally needed guidance from everybody on that team to even get through a day. Don't wear shorts on the bus. Like simple things like that. But just, if without that senior presence, the old guy presence, the guy that's done it, been through it, able to talk about it, teams are lost.
Yeah, there's no avoiding it. Like it's going to come up.
I like what you said, being willing to talk about it. You brought up something interesting. Being around a lot of young players, one thing they really appreciate is the vulnerability of veterans. A lot of times a player will be struggling And I said, Charlie Morton went through something just like this. Hey, go talk to Chuck. Go ask Chuck about his experience. And Charlie Morton says, yeah, I used to be nervous too. Or a guy is scuffling. Hey, go, Nelly Cruz is right over there. Go ask him a moment when he scuffled, when he was starting. What was that like? Probably didn't happen that very often with Nelly Cruz. But it's really cool. One thing that in my role, when I'm able to sit in when we're eating and so forth and hear veteran players share moments of vulnerability. I got nervous too. I was mad too. I was afraid of getting optioned too. And for the young player to be like, oh, I thought you were a robot. Okay, I didn't know. And the veterans start to say thoughts and feelings they had when they were going through tough times that these young players are having right now. That right there is so helpful for that young athlete.
It is.
I think that I've had more times where I've felt uncomfortable than I felt comfortable in the big leagues. For sure. There, especially whether it's health-wise or whatever, there's been, I'm uncomfortable more than I was comfortable. For sure. Mentally, physically, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, as a young player, I think you look at all the veteran guys like, oh man, they've done this for so long. Like none of this ever phases them. But you realize they're going through all the same things that you are as a young player. Like they just kind of know how to navigate it a little bit better. But that stuff never changes. And like, I'd like your perspective on it of like, you know, when you're a young guy and you always think like, well, once I have this, the stresses and pressures will go away. But that's the biggest, you know, bullshit thought that I think we all have in this game is like the stress and pressure, it never goes away. It just changes how it reappears. Yeah. You know, how it presents itself changes throughout your career. So like,
that's really good.
As like the 0 to 3 guy, you know, the guy that has, you know, no time, you're a rookie or you're pre-arb, you know, your day-to-day grind of like is I don't want to go back to the minor leagues, right? And then once you get to arb, it's like, well, I need to put up numbers so I can get paid. And once you're, you know, in year 6, you're like, well, I got to play good, so I get paid as a free agent. And also all the times that you're like, oh, once I get paid, like the stresses and pressures will go away. But then once you get paid, it's like, well, I'm counted on, you know, to produce on this team. Like I have to play good, and you want to show that you are worth the deal that you've got and contribute to a playoff team. And like the pressure never goes away. It just changes how it, you know, shows itself and appears. And you have to learn how to navigate that throughout your career. And I think as a young player, you always think there's going to be a point where it's like, I'm just going to play. It's like, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just going to change how it appears. And I was like kind of wondering if you had ever experienced that or had those thoughts, and then you realize like, oh, it never goes away.
So first of all, love that you watched episode 1 because we did talk about this.
Did you?
How individually everyone's got something they're going through. Trying to survive up here, trying to make some real money, trying to live up to signing to a big contract or living up to that money, whatever it is. Everyone is going through some kind of individual battle. And that individual battle you're going through, you feel like everybody in the room knows that individual battle, what you're going through, and everyone's just watching you go through it. So it's like, man, like how do I simplify this? How do I just free myself up to where you can go play? Because every young player, it's like, oh man, when I sign that 4 or 5 year deal, I promise you these 0 for 4s, I'm not gonna give a shit about. Like I'm just gonna go home, I'm gonna go to dinner, and I'm good. Like I'm paid, I'm guaranteed, I'm good.
Open up your Twitter, see how you feel then.
Oh, right.
Yeah, you don't come back to a bag of money on your chair after an 0 for 4. Like it's an empty chair no matter what, you know. So it's like you don't feel any better afterwards.
Buy a dog or something like that.
You're a little more secure for sure, but like you don't have that.
It's
know?
Different pressures.
Yeah.
It's different. You know, you don't want to come off as a certain type of guy, but it's different stuff that you're dealing with, and it's so true. But what I loved what you said is like you. After each season, you reflect on the season. You know, you evaluate what I do good, what can I have done better. Even for young players, like just going to a tournament over the weekend, you know, what did something happen new, or how did I do this? You evaluate, you get better. So now, like fast forwarding to this year, like how, as an older player, you know, with Murph taking over now, Pat Murphy, the new manager, I actually signed to go to Arizona State with him.
Yeah.
I was fired up to do that. This guy will make you run through a brick wall. So like as a veteran player, how is that this year? Is that something you think he's going to try and lean on you as far as pulse on the clubhouse and like pulse on how everything's going? Because there's not going to be much change because Counts and Murph, they come from together.
They've been connected way back, even, you know, pre-Brewers, because Murph managed Counts at Notre Dame when Counts played there. So like,
way back.
You know, they go way back in the baseball world. But I think it'll be a lot of the same, you know, like what's expected out of me on the team. It'll be the same as it has been in the past. Like Murph is different than Counts. Counts is different than Murph for sure. But, you know, he's familiar with all the guys. The guys are all familiar with him. So, you know, I think it's been so far a smaller adjustment than if it was like a completely new person came in with a whole new staff. The only guy that's changed on our staff is Counts. Like,
right.
You know, everybody else came back as exactly the same as it's been the last few years there. So everybody knows each other. The spring training's been running the exact same way. And I think he's going to do great. I'm excited for him because I know it's an opportunity that he's wanted for a while. And he's been in the game forever. You know, I don't even know how, 30 plus years. Knows everybody. You know, guys haven't even played for us and they all know Murph because they've crossed paths at some point, whether it was in college, being recruited by him, or just him talking to guys during batting practice. And I'm excited to see how it goes. And he's real fiery and guys are motivated to play for him. And I think he's going to do great.
Yeah, like you said, I think a lot of guys in the league are fired up for him because a lot of guys knew him from Arizona State or minor league coaches, whatever it was. But he can motivate, man, and he is going to have some epic ejections this year, I guarantee it. I cannot wait for it, and we're all here for it.
I think he's gonna have some good ones. He had great ones as a bench coach, you know.
I know, and that's where it's like, all right, I want to say what I want to say, but I don't want to overstep my boundaries.
Right, you
here.
can't really get thrown out as the bench
Pretty
coach because like that's kind of the manager's job to get tossed. You know, if you're anybody but the manager on the staff, like you don't really want to get run. Like every now and then, like a hitting coach will get thrown out for balls and strikes, or the bench coach will get run. But for the majority of the time, it's usually the manager. So now I feel like he kind of has like that free reign to say what he really wants to say.
He's off the leash. It's trouble.
I'm here for it.
Because he would never want to put Counts in that situation. You could see him steaming in the dugout about something, but he knew like, okay, like I can't do this to Counts right now and get run. But now I feel like, you know, if he really wants to say something, he's just going to let him have it.